What's up, everyone? Welcome back to NRL Fantasy Analysis. We're going to get started with this Thursday game, but firstly, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for everyone for engaging in the content and really enjoying this. We've had a pretty big week with the views this week, so I just want to say I really appreciate all your support so far. But we'll get started with the Rabbitohs, and up top, Latrell Mitchell, he comes out after a few lower weeks. His base has been a lot better this year, though, sitting around that 40 mark, and when he gets those attacking stats, is when he gets those big scores like he did in round one. So for those of you that were thinking about trying to get rid of him this week, then that was obviously a mistake. But in terms of that, he's a guy, and especially with the fullbacks in general, they got to have that 30 to 40 score. You had a look at what Roger did last week with his 80 odd. He gets a 30-40 base and then has a big one like that. And for him now to be averaging 60, he's definitely even more than a keeper in that fullback position, and puts him into that top 3 or 4 with Pat Ponga and Teddy there. So well done to Latrell. He's got a couple of tries. The try assist, 11 tackle breaks there, so awesome work for him. Next one on the list is Payne Haas at 77. Did anyone else watch last night and go, gee, I wish can't wait to have him in my squad in the next couple of weeks? Unfortunately, he probably got a few too many points there with 77. For his price to rock it down a little bit further, but it obviously just showed how good he is as a player and how much work he does. But the lack of demerits that he gets, he had one error, but 39 tackles for no misses, 5 tackle breaks, 170 meters, try saver in there as well. So this is going to be very much a normal type of game for him. That 66 minutes is completely fine. It looks like across those first 2 games that he's played, that's the types of minutes that he's going to be getting going forward, and that's completely okay, especially if he gets down around that 880, 890. I think he's going to be a pickup over the next few weeks. Something to remind yourself, though, is that he will be playing Origin, you'd imagine, at least off the bench for the Blues, so something to think about. But if you're looking to pick him up, then the next couple of weeks will be that time. All right, here we are, Campbell Graham and Dane Gagai. So I kind of enjoyed this one, but also didn't at the same time. I'd been spruiking him this week, Graham, saying that he's definitely a keeper. He was last year, and he's just had a bit of a soft start, and a negative 108k so far, and an average around 32. He was someone that was very much on my radar, and I told a few people to pick him up, and I hope that a lot of you did, and picked up that lovely 63. So obviously got the try this week, but just was a lot more involved and had more meters gained than he has in the past at 195, and picked up 8 tackle breaks as well. But obviously he's not going to be playing the Broncos each week. They didn't absolutely smash them, but it was a pretty comprehensive victory, and he picked up that try. And I would expect many more games like this where he's, as I said, is that kind of guy in the centers that if your base is around that 30 mark, and then if you do happen to get the attacking stats, the try assist, the tries there, and you can get your scores up from the 50s and 60s, then you have that mid-40s average, and that's where I expect Graham to be this year. Very similar to someone like Gagai. Obviously, average at 48 currently, and has had a better start to the year with them going down that left side a lot more than they do the right. But for him to pick up 60 there without any tries is great. So 2 try assists there, 4 tackle breaks, 18 tackles for 2 misses. You can't complain there. And both these guys are definitely going to be keepers this year, like we've said at the start of the year. If you're someone with Jake Turpin, you're really happy with his output so far. Again, very unfortunate for those that dropped him after that, the first couple of weeks. But the last 3 have been amazing with 66, 62, and 56 for a total average of 54 for the year. So another 56 tackles for him. 1 missed tackle, 2 errors, which a couple of them was at one terrible forward pass that went about 17 meters forward. But anyway, he's got a couple of kick meters out of dummy half as well. So for him, anywhere in the mid-50s to 60 is going to be great. He's going to make a lot more cash for us, because if he's sitting at that 54 average over the next bunch of weeks, sort of 3 to 4, we'll see Turpin get up to around that 700k mark. So another 100k to be added to his value at this stage. I had a few people ask me if he was worth bringing in this week. And look, on his scoring, I'd say he is, but most of us have a bunch of hookers, whether it be Brayley, Little, then you've got guys like McCulloch, Cook, all these types of players. I just feel like bringing in another hooker at this stage was probably not the best idea. So sorry if I turned you off, Turpin, but I think that's kind of my reasoning around not bringing him in. Similar thing with Milford, and he just keeps doing it. He had a very slow start to the game, and then ends up with still end up with 55. So again, dominating the kick meters at 418, and just getting a bit of everything. He's got the four tackle breaks, turnover tackle, couple offloads, 19 tackles there. So it adds up pretty quickly for these types of players. And for Milford to have an average of 50 across the first 5 games, that's amazing work for him. And if you decide to pick him up, you've done really well. And you probably gain another 40 to 50k this week. So again, if I turned you off him and decided to push you away from Milf, I'm sorry for that. But I think, with most of us having sort of 3-4 halves already, and O'Sullivan, Walker, Schuster, Cleary, whoever you got, Moses, Fogarty, all these types of guys, I don't feel like adding a fifth half there or trading Luke Brooks to him was a bit silly. They're both going to score pretty similar. So that's my theory on Milford. Cam Murray's a very interesting one at the moment. Over the last 3 weeks, he's averaged 50, 52 minutes per game, and then 60 this week, and still picked up to 50. But what you're looking for with him at this price is it's very similar to how we talk about Jake Trbojevic there. With at 700k, they're both sitting around that mark. They're priced to average this at 52. So these types of guys that I feel like you should be able to hold them in your team. Like, they're the types of players you're not going to be worried about, because they're going to score that 50 every week. A lot of people are looking to go him to Fafita, him to Cleary. And I could probably understand Murray to Cleary, but with Fafita, you expect him to average somewhere in the 60s. And yes, he has a bit of money to make, but surely you can get up to him, through someone else rather than through Murray. That's just my thoughts with that, because these types of guys like Murray are very safe scorers in your team, and I feel like especially across the year, they're the types of players that you just want to keep in your squad for the whole year, not have to worry about them, and tinker with the other parts of your squad, especially over the next few weeks when guys like Little, we got some of the forwards in Alvaro, these types of guys, once they get up to 400, 500, 600. You can then do an upgrade to an 800k player and then a downgrade to a 250, 300 type of player when those kind of cash cows pop up. So I think that's something really interesting to think about. And rather than moving on guys like Murray, trading a keeper for a 10-point better keeper, for example, then do it that way instead. I think that's a better option. Moving on to Reynolds, and had a pretty great game. How good was his over 40-meter field goal? I think it was 45 out and it cleared it by 20. So just absolutely smashed that off the boot for the first one of the year. But for him to still get 48 with a try, a field goal, a try assist, only 5 tackles, which was strange, but it's probably not going to be the best option for anyone's side. Just again, we've got a bunch of halves. He's averaging 52, which is great, but there's a bunch of those guys in the top tier who are averaging in the 60s, and then you got a bunch of guys in the cash cow range that are averaging in the 40s. So I feel like Reynolds is sort of in that middle tier that you don't really need at this stage. If we move on to Host, if anyone still held Host and played him, he got 48, which was cool. One of his better games with no demerits. Matty Lodge with 46 in his 46 minutes. So here it is. It took him 3 games out of 5 to end up scoring kind of what we thought he would from the start. So thanks, mate. Thanks for doing it in round 5, not in round 1. Decided to get injured instead. Thanks, mate. But if you held him out till this point, then 46 was great. But he's down 32k and would have just pretty much close to hit his break even. So no money making potential at this stage, but awesome if you held him. Marshall with 46 was good. Glenn was 45. He's coming to the end of his money making potential, averaging 44 there. Somewhere in the mid 500s will be his lockout period. And Damien Cook, very interesting one here. That's the second game this year where he's had about a 15-minute stint on the sideline, so coming off early there with 44. And if he played that 80, you'd be expecting somewhere in the 50s. And it's a very up and down roller coaster at this stage of the year. He's got, a 37, a couple of 40 odds, and an 80 and a 90. So, to average 59, including 3 scores under 50, is still really good. And that's kind of how you've got to look at him. Is he going to average 60 for the year? Yes. Is your money better spent elsewhere? I think that's what I ended up deciding that it was after round 1. So I think you've got to make that decision for yourself. And I'm not going to tell people to trade him out just because he is going to be one of those guns at the end of the year. And you think about it, if he didn't get a couple of games off here with a 15-minute spell, then he would be averaging around that 64, 65, you would say, which is exactly what he's priced at the start of the year. So if you think that it's going to be a regular stint on the sidelines for him, coming off early, at the end of games, then when they're winning, then yeah, okay. But if not, then I think you should, you can probably keep him. If you've only got like him and Brayley with a little, I think you should probably keep Cook at this stage. But if you have like McCulloch as well, and or you've got Turpin, Brayley, etc., then you could probably think about moving them on and spending your money elsewhere. If you're lacking guns in other positions, then that might be an idea. Mark Nichols, a few people have asked me about Nichols, and that's a couple of games in a row that he scored pretty well. At 453, he's in that weird tier, though, that he needs 50 or 60 minutes to score really well and be worth, somewhere in the 550 to 600 range. So I wouldn't be thinking about him, especially he'll gain a little bit after this week. Dearden, his price will start to steady out a little bit after that 41. Asako, if you held him, he scored a nice try and got one goal kick there for his troubles, but you'll take that in a pretty bad loss. He's 41, and hopefully I think a few people that had him maybe didn't play him this week, so either way, you're not losing cash, which is good. I think a few people had Johnston and decided to hold on to him and got a try and got 40, so you'll cop that, but I'd still be looking to move him on as he's not a money-making player and he's not a keeper. All right, Pangai Jr. is a very interesting one in this game. That's 2 games in a row now where he's had lower minutes and his PPM wasn't as great. So obviously with Payne Haas back, with Lodge back, they have more firepower than what they did before when Pangai was sort of the main guy. Pangai the main guy, nice. 729k, he's priced to average in the mid-50s. So for him to score a couple of 30s in a row, that's really alarming. And if you see this as continuing, I think he's probably someone that you could try to move on to a Fafita, a Crichton, a Tohu Harris, who's a lot more consistent and you think will safely average in the mid-60s. Whereas Pangai, if he's not getting enough minutes, it's just, you can't expect him to have a PPM of 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 like he kind of had in those first bunch of games. So if you have him, I'd be worried at this stage. Coming out a little bit lower, we've got a couple of players left to go, and Jordan Ricky had to go off for about 15 minutes. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but he did come on and finish off the rest of the game. So if he played that 80, you would expect somewhere in the mid-40s again like last week, which is completely fine. But a few people were tempted to bring him in this week, and I think he's already made 130k. A lot of his money making will have slowed down. I expect him to peak somewhere in the mid-500s unless he picks up a 70-plus score again. Still think he's okay to play at this stage, so he's obviously coming up against a few tough teams, and when he's not making as many run meters, then his attacking stats are going to be much lower. So for him, definitely hold, but keep looking out for those types of scores. And if you can get back to the mid-40s and high 40s, then he'll be sweet. All right, Jai Arrow, only 36 minutes this week, and this is kind of the worry for picking him up the start of the year, somewhere around the 600k mark after that really good couple of games. Anyone off the bench is very hard for them to go really well. And I'm interested to see what Isaiah Papali'i is going to be like over these next few weeks. Is he going to be able to keep up those types of scores that he had in the first 2 rounds? That's going to be my thoughts with Papali'i there. And same with Arrow. I think he's definitely very close to a sell. I don't think he's, at best, he might be able to hold his price and score pretty well. But at worst, you'd be expecting him to lose a bit of value, unfortunately. And coming to our last one that's kind of important here is Tessie New. And another 28 there. So pretty much what we expect. I think he's very safe, if I'm honest. For someone that's in an average team playing in the centres, your low score for him for the year is in the high 20s, 27 last week, no, 29 last week. But those types of scores there. He's only had one real high, attacking stats game where he got a try. But for him to average 32, he's made 90k for you. He covers wing, fullback, and centre. I think you just keep him in your side. You can get away with playing him, and if he scores a try one of those weeks, you jag a 40 odd, which is cool. So I wouldn't be trading him out at all. And moving along, anyone who had Xavier Coates unfortunately copped a 6 in 80 minutes, which is almost as bad as obviously David Mead, slightly worse than Mead with a 7 in 80 minutes. So for those that are still laughing at me saying that Mead was a great option, any of that is just been ruined with a 7. So yes, he made 90k for you. And if you traded him this week, well done. If you didn't, he's going to be starting to lose a bunch of that money. But there you go, guys. That's the update for our Thursday night games. Let me know if you've got any questions about any of these players, but hopefully I've covered all that off for you. If you're enjoying these videos, please hit like, hit subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next one, team.